She gave a homeless man one night of shelter. What she discovered next was beyond amazing. Sarah rushed through the biting December air, her mind racing with the day's unresolved tasks. Balancing her nursing studies with single motherhood left little room for respite. Each unpaid bill loomed like a storm cloud overhead, blocking the sunlight of her dreams. She longed to find her rhythm as a nurse, a beacon of hope for those in need, but how could she maintain that ambition when every day felt like a relentless sprint toward desperation? As she turned the corner, her breath hitched. Beneath the smudged glass of the closed library, a ragged figure shivered under a tattered blanket. It was Jack, the homeless man she had seen on several chilly nights. Against her instinct, an unsettling twist in her gut ignited her compassion. Her heart whispered that just for one night, she could extend a hand. But the worry gnawed at her. She didn't have the luxury of time or resources to spare. What if he were dangerous? What if he brought trouble? She hesitated, her body frozen between the desire to help and the fear of the unknown. Yet, looking at Jack's weary eyes, her resolve softened. "Come with me, I'll get you something warm to eat," she found herself saying. The decision felt like both salvation and damnation. Her mind trembled under the weight of the approaching consequences. Inside her cramped apartment, as the fire crackled softly in the corner, tension swirled around them. As they shared a simple meal, Sarah learned Jack was no ordinary homeless man. He was once a professor, a well-respected academic drawn into misfortune. His stories of lost research and shattered dreams felt like concrete reminders of her precarious position in life. He asked insightful questions about her nursing studies, igniting a flicker of passion for her work. With every passing minute, she found herself torn. This man could help her excel, yet she feared the judgment of her neighbors. Would they see him as she did, a brilliant mentor? Or would they perpetuate the stigma she both internalized and resisted? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Yet with each fleeting laugh shared, a knot tightened in her stomach as she imagined her neighbors' disapproving glances. When a cough escaped Jack's lips, panic swept over her. He was growing weaker each day, and her own financial struggles loomed large. The price of warmth and healing was not just his well-being but the judgment she would undoubtedly face. Then the bombshell dropped. Jack's connection to a legendary past in Maplewood emerged under the crackling firelight. His lost research could rewrite the town's history, challenge long-held misconceptions, but at what cost? The trajectory of her life, intertwined with his, was teetering on the edge of an incredible revelation. Could she risk her small-town reputation to help him regain his worth? As the metaphoric clock ticked, burdened by looming deadlines and societal whispers, Sarah felt herself spiraling into a whirlpool of uncertainty. The fight for Jack's redemption was dawning, yet at what price? It was this crossroads of fear that gripped her heart. Was she ready to stand against the current of ignorance demanding to be reckoned with? Sarah's thoughts churned, caught in the relentless tide of emotion battling within her. The shadows seemed to deepen in the flickering firelight, mirroring her growing sense of unease. Jack's past was tantalizing, a beacon of intellectual promise wrapped in layers of despair. A brilliant professor reduced to the streets, holding narratives that could alter perceptions. She felt a weighty responsibility. If she chose to help him revive his work, she might reclaim not just his dignity but also her own ambitions. Yet what of her responsibilities as a mother? The bills were piling up and her son needed her more than ever. The flickers of satisfaction from her studies were dimmed by the sharp reality of their situation. Her lifespan of exhausting shifts as a nursing student and a single mom often left her feeling hollow. Could she truly spread her wings with Jack's future connected to hers? Jack coughed again, a raw sound that sent ice spikes through her heart. She leaned forward, her hands falling into her lap, a torrent of thoughts crashing into one another. The decision to tether herself to him felt reckless, as though she would be jumping into a chasm with no safety net beneath. Could a man who had once held a position of prestige still harbor the strength to rise again? And in doing so, would it ultimately elevate her aspirations or drown them in accusations from others? "Sarah, I know I don't deserve your kindness," Jack's voice broke into her dangerous thoughts, filled with an urgency that held her captive. "But I need your help to finish what I started. There are pieces of history here that have been buried for too long." His eyes glimmered with conviction, and for a moment, she caught a glimpse of the man he once was. "I need to think about this. My life isn't just mine anymore," she replied, her voice a whisper tinged with uncertainty. "Please," he said, desperation shadowing his features. "Sharing knowledge, the truth, it's a profound act. You're training to be a nurse, and a nurse doesn't just heal bodies but also spirits. All I ask is for a chance." The vulnerability in his words struck deep. She sat back, crossing her arms tightly as if to physically shield herself from the implications of what her heart was beginning to comprehend. The nursing career she was striving for demanded resilience, empathy, and courage, qualities echoing in the very fabric of Jack's plea. What if, through this act of compassion, she discovered strength within herself she hadn't known existed? A flicker of rebellion sparked in Sarah's chest. She wrestled with the notion that every minute spent with Jack was a step deeper into uncertainty, yet could also be a step forward into the unforeseen. The pressure of her academic commitment surged, but so did the allure of academic exploration that Jack presented a chance to unearth truths, challenge societal missteps. Suddenly, a thought dawned upon her, unsettling yet compelling. Could this alliance be the very catalyst that not only revived Jack's lost work but redefined her space in the world? What if, by joining forces, they could break barriers that had kept her aspirations restrained? But then, the reality of her life surged back, a cold wave crashing against the possibility of lofty ideals. Was she prepared to face her neighbors, to bear the scrutiny that would surely follow if people learned of her association? The question loomed, heavy and damning. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, a cruel reminder of time slipping away. With Jack leaning closer, every shared breath filled with potential, Sarah knew she was standing at a precipice. With her heart racing, she felt exhilarated and terrified all at once. Jack could not simply be a temporary shelter from the winter, he could be the key to her breakthrough. As the night deepened and the fire crackled low, Sarah made a silent vow when the moment of clarity struck she would explore this path, however murky it looked. But as she deliberated her next steps, a tapping sound broke through the silence of the night, sharp and urgent. Sarah's heart sank as she recognized the contours of the familiar silhouette at her door. "Sarah, we need to talk," the voice called out, pulling her back into a world of scrutiny she feared. The moment had arrived for her to confront the reality she had tried to evade, a confrontation of values, choices, and the risk of becoming something more than merely a nursing student and mother in a small town. The time had come to face the implications of her decisions. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The unmistakable voice belonged to her neighbor, Margaret, a woman whose scrutiny cut sharper than a knife. Their paths clashed often, clashing worldviews echoing in their exchanges. It was as if each encounter revealed cracks in her carefully constructed life. The tapping on the door echoed questions she hadn't been ready to answer, and now the burden of her choices felt heavier than ever. Pushing the door open, she forced a smile, yet the uncertainty hung in the air between them. "Margaret, what's all this about?" She tried to keep her voice steady but felt the tremor beneath it. "Can we talk inside?" Margaret's tone was serious, the soft cadence drawing out the tension like a tightly wound coil ready to snap. Sarah hesitated, grappling with her instincts. Letting her inside could expose not only her sheltering Jack but the secrets that simmered beneath her surface. "Sure," she finally relented, keeping her voice light while inviting her in. As they settled across from one another at the small kitchen table, Sarah's mind raced. She locked eyes with Margaret, daring her to probe, yet hoping the woman would refrain. After a moment of silence, Margaret leaned forward, her expression softening. "I couldn't help but notice you've been spending time with that man, Jack." The words slid like ice down Sarah's spine, the judgment inherent in them palpable. "Yes, he's a friend," Sarah replied, cautiously controlling her words. Each syllable felt like it could ignite a firestorm, yet she sensed the truth was lurking behind her guard. "Friend? Sarah, he's a drifter, a former professor, sure, but with a troubled past. Are you sure this is wise?" Margaret's brow knit with concern, an emotion Sarah recognized was wrapped in the social authority of their small town. Taking a deep breath, Sarah centered herself. "He's more than just a drifter. He has knowledge and stories that matter, knowledge I want to learn from. You don't know what it's like to live in his shoes. But what about your responsibilities? Your son needs you. You can't take on someone else's burdens and leave your own." Margaret's voice sizzled with a tone that straddled disapproval and care. A flash of defiance ignited in Sarah. "I have a right to make choices about who I help, and what I learn along the way. This could be my opportunity to break free from just being a nursing student or a single mom." She felt the words surge through her, a powerful declaration. "Every moment I spend with him could fuel my growth, not just academically but as a person capable of change." Margaret's face shifted, an acknowledgement flickering in her eyes but quickly masked by the weight of societal expectation. "Change isn't always good, Sarah. Associating with someone like Jack could lead to judgment. People won't understand your motives." For a moment, Sarah felt raw and exposed, the full impact of her choices crashing down like a wave. But in that vulnerability, clarity broke through. "I can't live my life based on what others think or their fear of who I choose to associate with. The world shouldn't be narrowed by their definitions of success." Margaret looked away, seemingly grappling with Sarah's intensity, and with it, the enormity of her choice hung in the air. The uncertainty now twisted within Sarah a realization of the risk she was about to embrace, yet feeling the surge of empowerment that came with claiming her narrative. Finally, Margaret spoke again, her voice soft but unyielding. "Just be careful. This could change everything." As she nodded, Sarah felt the tug of doubt grapple with her exhilaration, but deep down, she acknowledged change was precisely what she needed. The journey with Jack could unlock something within her, but its implications loomed vast and unknown. Margaret's words echoed as she closed the door behind her, solitude reclaiming the space, and with it, Sarah's rushing heartbeat. The connection formed with Jack dangled over the precipice of judgment, and yet she felt she was standing at the brink of vast potential. But one question lingered unanswered: was she prepared for the transformation that loomed ahead, the escalating connection that could either forge her legacy or fracture her life? With the shadows lengthening as twilight began to drape the room, she turned to Jack, who remained musing in the flickering light. Determination swelled within her. She was ready to proceed, but the real question loomed, preparing her for the shadows of internal and external conflict that were sure to unfold. What revelations awaited them both as they faced the world outside? The following day, Sarah awoke to an unfamiliar sense of purpose. She stared at the ceiling from her bed, the sunlight filtering through the curtains like a warm embrace. For the first time in years, she felt motivation coursing through her veins, a stark contrast to the routine drudgery that had defined her existence. Today wasn't just another day, it was an opportunity to embark on a journey of self-discovery. After a quick breakfast, she busied herself with her studies, flipping through dense textbooks on nursing, but her mind kept drifting to Jack. Thoughts of his past, the storms he weathered, the knowledge he carried painted her daydreams. What if she could unlock a new perspective by learning from a man who had walked a different path? The notion exhilarated her, transforming her trepidation into a curious excitement. As she made her way to her appointed study session with Jack, she noticed how the vibrant colors of the world around her seemed to reflect her burgeoning hope. The grass was greener, the sky bluer, a stark contrast to the dull haze she had felt just days ago. She quickened her pace, the ache of doubts rearing up again, but she quelled them. This was a leap into the unknown, a necessary risk. When Sarah reached the dilapidated cabin where Jack resided, she hesitated outside the door. What if her decision brought not only change but chaos? Deep breath. Casting the uncertainties into the wind, she knocked. Jack answered with that familiar, thoughtful gaze, a hint of surprise lighting up his features. "Sarah, good to see you," he said, gesturing for her to enter. The air inside was imbued with a rich aroma of brewing coffee, far less grim than the ramshackle exterior suggested. Taking a seat at the small table, she noticed a stack of books piled high in the corner. Intrigued, she found herself drawn to a worn-out copy of Thoreau S. Walden. "Do you read often?" she asked, genuinely curious. Jack chuckled lightly. "I try to. Books have been my companions through the roughest patches of life." His eyes softened. Life has its way of making us seek refuge in the pages of stories. Sarah let his words settle in her mind, recognizing the ownership he had taken of his circumstances. Here was a man transformed by his experiences, one who seamlessly wove lessons learned into his identity. "I want to learn from you, Jack," she heard herself say, her voice steady now. "Not just academically, but about life, about change." Each word felt like breaking a spell, a proclamation of her intent, opening the door to new dimensions of their connection. Jack looked at her, the light in his eyes deepening. "That's a brave thing to say, Sarah. Do you understand what that means? It requires vulnerability and honesty." "I'm ready for that," she assured him, the conviction in her voice solidifying her resolve. But internally, a nagging question emerged: could she truly peel back the layers of her identity? In the hours that followed, they discussed everything from philosophy to the art of caregiving. Jack's insights challenged her assumptions, pushing her beyond the scripts she had followed for so long. She discovered layers of empathy she hadn't known existed within her, fueling her ambition to conquer more than just her nursing studies. Suddenly, a knock at the door interrupted their exchange. It jolted Sarah from her newfound realm of thought. Who could it be? As she exchanged glances with Jack, a flicker of apprehension ignited within her. What if this was a revisitation of her past, an intrusion that would unravel everything she had started to build? With a determined breath, she opened the door, her heart racing. As the door swung wide, her breath caught once more. The face that loomed on the other side hadn't brought her a comforting wave of nostalgia but a sense of looming dread. It was Margaret, and beside her stood the town sheriff, a grim resolve etched across his face. "Sarah, we need to talk," Margaret said in a tone that sent a shiver down her spine. In that moment, Sarah realized that the world she had begun to explore with Jack might be colliding with the reality she fought so hard to escape. Was she truly ready to face the consequences of her choices? The tension in the air was suffocating. Sarah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Margaret's gaze, which seemed to penetrate the essence of her very being. Jack's presence behind her was palpable, a silent pillar of support, yet she sensed a shift. The moment had evolved from hopeful beginnings into grim reality. "I can't talk right now," Sarah replied, her voice taut. She stepped into the doorway, blocking the entry to her sanctuary. The look of disappointment on Margaret's face only fortified her resolve. "Please, just hear us out." "It's about your dad," Margaret pressed, urgency lacing her tone. He's ill, Sarah." The words hit her like a punch. A surge of emotions clamored for her attention: fear, guilt, the bitter taste of anger. Memories of her father's reckless lifestyle flashed through her mind, overshadowing any trace of the man she once idolized. How could she face him now? After everything, was she in any way obligated to help? He has been wandering again, and he was found at the edge of town, disoriented. "We think it's serious this time." The sheriff's stoic presence served as a reminder of the harsh realities she often preferred to ignore. Sarah's mind raced. Part of her felt an unwavering pull to care for the man who had left her as a child, for the fleeting fragments of their shared past. But another part cautioned her to retreat into the newfound changes she's begun nurturing in her life. Wasn't he that betraying the lessons Jack had imparted? Is this why you're here? She faltered slightly, uncertain. To drag me back into that chaos? Margaret looked pained, perhaps understanding the weight of her words. Sarah, we wouldn't come if it weren't important. I think he really needs you right now. A moment lingered, heavy with long-held resentments and unspoken hopes. Jack stepped forward, his presence grounding her. Sarah, you have the choice. You can help him, or you can choose to walk away. But what do you want for yourself? His question hung in the air, demanding introspection and clarity. A battle raged within her. The comfort of ignoring her past against the impulse to confront it head-on stood like a steel wall. And yet, she recognized this was the crucible of change. Could this moment be an opportunity to redefine herself, to own her story instead of running from it? Maybe you could help him more than anyone, given your training, Jack added quietly, his voice a steady encouragement. What if I fail? The vulnerability slipped out before she could grasp the fear behind it. And what if you succeed? Jack countered. His unwavering gaze ignited a flicker of determination within her. Could this be an opportunity for healing? For both herself and her estranged father? Taking a deep breath, Sarah nodded slowly, her voice firm yet uncertain. Okay, I'll help. But I can't do it alone. Margaret exhaled, relief softening her features. Then let us go. As they turned to leave, Sarah felt the tension begin to uncoil within her. There was still fear, but alongside it was the stirring of hope, a blazing ember waiting to ignite. Perhaps Jack was right. These were uncharted waters, but every journey demanded its risks. As they drove toward the town's outskirts, her heart hammered in her chest. The anxiety was palpable, juxtaposed with a sense of impending discovery. She had professed vulnerability, had leaped into the unknown, and now that choice faced her. When they arrived, Sarah's breath hitched as she saw her father. There he was, crumpled in disarray, just as she remembered. The thoughts raced through her, would she see a broken man or a father needing a fragile lifeline? She walked towards him with hesitant steps, each one resonating with the weight of unresolved emotions. As she approached, her heart pounded. What awaited on the other side of this encounter? What truths would she unveil about him, about her past, and ultimately, about herself? She realized that in the depths of uncertainty lay the seed of transformation. Would this meeting propel her toward the understanding she sought? Or would it force her to confront the scars she had buried deep within? The answer loomed, heavy and potent, over the moment as she reached out to bridge the distance. Would she dare to dive into the depths of her past, or would it consume her whole? The moment Sarah stood before her father, all the reluctance and doubt she had nurtured spiraled in her mind like a chaotic storm. The years of bitterness and unresolved issues threatened to overtake her, yet as she looked into his eyes, she saw a flicker of vulnerability buried behind the layers of neglect and despair that had defined their relationship. Could she reach him? "Dad," she said, her voice barely a whisper, uncertain of which part of her, the daughter or the professional, would take charge. Would the new Sarah rise to the challenge, or would the child who once desperately wanted his affection be drowned out by resentment? His eyes flickered with recognition, a momentary clarity amidst the fog of his condition. "Sarah?" he croaked, almost as if testing the very sound of her name. In that moment, without even needing to fully articulate it, Sarah understood that this was no longer about the past, but about establishing a bridge, a two-way street towards something resembling healing. She positioned herself on the edge of that bridge, tentatively offering her hand. "I'm here," she asserted, grounding the fraying edges of her own emotions. "I want to help." He looked down, shame washing over his features. Sarah, feeling the weight of what lay unspoken, knew she had to push through this uncomfortable barrier. "You are not alone in this. I can help, but you have to want it too." Her training as a nurse taught her that effective care required engagement. The receiver had to be willing to meet the caregiver halfway, or there would be no progress. "Do you even know how far I've fallen?" he retorted bitterly, eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. At that moment, his anger felt like a necessary defense mechanism, a way to shield himself from the reality of his failures. "I do, Dad. And I can't pretend it doesn't hurt me," she replied evenly. "But I can't change it either. We can't change the past. What I want to know is, do you want help?" Silence enveloped them, filled with echoes of past hurts lingering in the air like an unresolved melody. Jack, standing nearby, observed the emotional choreography, ready to step in if needed. Yet, Sarah felt a strength swell within her. She was no longer the scared little girl, she was a woman who had weathered her own storms and emerged stronger. Maybe, he faltered, voice cracking. "That essay start," she encouraged, her own heart racing with the uncertainty of what was to come. To confront this reality stripped her bare vulnerability tumbled out with every word, yet she took a step forward, transforming her fear into the potential for renewal. As Sarah talked him through the steps of seeking medical assistance, it became imperative for her to establish boundaries. She was there to help, but this would require her father to acknowledge that he needed healing. "This isn't just about physical health," she said softly. "It's about your mind and soul too. We need to address everything if you want to change." With each hesitant agreement he granted, Sarah felt a new sense of empowerment swell within her. She existed as a voice of reason, bridging the chasm they had spent years widening. It was liberating, yet as invigorating as it was, she felt the residual fear of failure lurking in her subconscious. Could she sustain this emotional labor? After hours spent in conversation punctuated by moments of raised voices and quiet tears, they arrived at a silent agreement to take the first steps toward rehabilitation. Sarah's heart swelled with hope, but beneath that lay the awareness that this was only the beginning. As they prepared to leave, Sarah cast a glance back at the house where her father had been found. Would this truly be the start of something new, or merely a flicker destined to extinguish? She felt the pull of doubt creeping in again, yet alongside it emerged a fierce determination. They had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back now. As they headed toward the car, Sarah's phone buzzed a text from Jack. "You did well. But remember, he has to want this just as much." She nodded, acknowledging his wisdom, while a new question formed: what if her father's willingness to change turned out to be more profound and necessary than her own healing? Could she stand strong as she witnessed his journey unfold? This was uncharted territory. The time had come for Sarah to confront not only her father's demons but also the shadows lingering in her own heart. As they drove away, her mind whirled with possibilities, each one more tantalizing than the last. Would she find the strength to navigate the difficult road ahead, or might she discover her own hidden vulnerabilities along the way? In her quest to help her father, would she ultimately find a deeper understanding of herself? The ride home was filled with an unsettling silence, the kind that swells when you've crossed a line but remain unsure what lies on the other side. Sarah's gaze shifted between the road ahead and her father's profile reflected in the window. The unspoken words hung heavily in the air. They were navigating an expanse filled with potential but also uncertainty. Her mind raced through the conversations they'd shared, replaying the emotions that had flickered across his face. With each agreement he had given, she felt her own hope grow, yet that hope was anchored by the fear that he might retract the very steps they had taken. What if today's recognition faded tomorrow? What if he chose to retreat back into his cocoon of despair? Jack's words floated through her thoughts, haunting and grounding at the same time. He had reminded her that the choice was her father's, difficult as it was. Yet Sarah felt the weight of her own obligation to ensure that this wasn't merely a momentary spark. She needed a plan that could sustain their fragile connection. "Dad," she ventured cautiously, steering the conversation back to the present. "Once we get home, I think we should talk about a support system. You'll need people around you who understand this process." He turned to her, brows furrowing, uncertainty knitting lines across his forehead. "What do you mean? I'm not sure I want anyone else involved." The defensiveness rippled through her. After hearing his initial reluctance, she wanted to reach deeper. "I understand that it's intimidating. But opening up to a support group could help you embrace the changes more fully. There's strength in numbers. He turned his gaze back to the window, the reflections of houses passing by mirroring the indecision etched on his face. I hate the thought of being judged, he muttered, almost to himself. None of them will be judging you, she said firmly but gently. They're facing their own battles, just like you. This can be a safe space. Silence filled the car as they approached home. Sarah parked but remained seated. The thought of going inside without articulating a definitive plan gnawed at her. Listen, she said, framing her words with care, healing isn't a straight path. There will be ups and downs, and I want to be there for you. To support you through this. He huffed softly, disappointment surfacing. You have no idea how hard it is. You see me in one light, but you don't really know me or what this feels like. Challenged, fuming. Maybe I don't. But I've had my own struggles, Dad. The words tumbled out, unexpected and vulnerable. I've felt lost and alone. And figuring it out has been terrifying. He looked at her then, surprise etched into his features. Since when? Since I learned to stop hiding from my own pain. I had to confront what was buried inside of me, what I had become because of it. I think that, in some way, we're both stumbling through the same fog. He blinked, her confession cracking open a window into shared understanding. The tension in his shoulders eased ever so slightly. He was grappling with the realization that her journey, too, was fraught with challenges he had never known. Okay, he said slowly, almost as if testing the word. Maybe I'd deconsider it. Genuine warmth flooded her chest. It was a small progress, but progress nonetheless. However, as they exited the car, Sarah's mind wrestled with another fear: what truths about her own willingness to be vulnerable would arise if she pursued deeper connections in his recovery. Once inside, she retrieved her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she stopped at Jack's name. She paused, debating whether to call or seek his counsel in the wake of this breakthrough. Perhaps having him along for the ride could help balance her emotional labor. Before she made the call, she was struck by another thought, a visceral reminder that her heart was still fragile. As much as she wanted to support her father, the notion of unearthing her own buried demons paralleled her father's confrontation with the darkness in his life. What if both of them needed experts to help hold their hands through the murky waters of healing? Rebel thoughts began to form. Just as she pressed dial, her mind kicked into overdrive. Would her father's willingness to address their shared divergence lead her back to a past she had buried? What if their twin journeys intertwined in unforeseen ways, revealing deeper truths about herself? The line clicked, and Jack's voice broke through, steady and reassuring. Yet, as Sarah opened her mouth to speak, she sensed the looming shadows of the past awaiting her confession. This was no longer about her father alone. Would she find the courage to embrace what lay within her as they plunged deeper into the uncharted territory of healing? The phone slipped through Sarah's fingers, the soft vibration against the table echoing her turmoil. She grasped for it, reeling from the weight of the moment. Jack's voice lingered in her mind, yet the palpable tension coiled tight in her chest. Maybe you're right, she said awkwardly, resetting her focus. Discussing support networks felt monumental, but she felt the urgency to steer the conversation toward herself. They had both been navigating darkness, but could she reveal the slender threads of her own struggles without inadvertently unraveling the fabric of their fragile bond? Drawing a deep breath, she pressed the call button. The sound of Jack's voice, so familiar and yet so distant, washed over her, grounding her momentarily. Hey, Sarah. What's up? Behind his reassuring tone, she detected a subtle curiosity, perhaps even concern. It struck her how authenticity often birthed vulnerability. Her internal dialogue wrestled with itself. How could she offer her father a guiding hand if she refused to confront the shadows in her own life? Hi, Jack, she replied, the words spilling hesitantly at first. I think I want to talk about the past. My past. What's brought this up? She felt her stomach twist. This was the sharp edge of obscurity one wrong move could slice through the new, emerging connection she and her father had started to forge. My dad and I were trying to work through some things, but I keep feeling this fear. Fear of the unknown, and of really letting him in. Fear is natural, especially when it comes to family dynamics, he said. His voice steadied her, though a new tension arose. What if Jack could provide insight she hadn't been able to identify before? Right, but I've never really opened up to anyone. I mean, I've done the work, seen the therapist, but revealing those deeper layers I hesitate. What if I fail? I think you're already succeeding, he replied, his confidence in her infectious. You're expressing awareness, which is the first step toward growth. But you also have to see that growth is messy, it rarely comes cleanly wrapped. She absorbed his words, battling the inevitable flood of self-doubt that followed. Were they just platitudes, or did they offer genuine insight? But what if he gets hurt more instead? What if I can't handle it? It's about being truthful and authentic, Sarah. Your experiences may resonate more with him than you realize. Sometimes, seeing the layers of another can remind us of our humanity. But you have to be willing to stand on the edge of vulnerability. His words rang in her ears like a bell tolling the onset of an emotional reckoning. Could she really peel back the years of self-imposed isolation and sliver of trauma? As she processed this advice, she recognized an unsettling parallel with her father's journey, the precarious balance of pain and acceptance. In that moment, she resolved to embrace her own deeper truths. A thought ignited behind her eyes. I think I need to prepare him for what I might share. And in doing so, prepare myself. Sounds like a wise plan. Our vulnerabilities don't just exist in isolation, they affect those we are close to. It's about realizing that revealing doesn't equate to weakness. Sarah felt an ember of determination igniting within her. Jack's steadfast perspective energized her. Within that flicker lay a chance to connect with the very parts of herself she'd stowed away for too long. How do I do it? The question escaped her lips, carrying a weight she'd long held. Be honest. Situate your vulnerabilities in the context of your journey rather than diving into the past itself. Set boundaries while simultaneously being transparent. This is what you were comfortable showing. Once again, Sarah took a breath, feeling the pulse of clarity in the storm surrounding her. It was no longer about holding tightly to her own fears, but rather sharing them, allowing both her father and herself to step into the light of vulnerability together. But in that moment of clarity, she felt an unexpected torrent of sadness increasingly gathering. Weight inside her, the need to confront both her past and her father's pain growing ever clearer. Sarah. Jack's voice interrupted her thoughts, a gentle insistence anchoring her. Yeah. I'm still here, she replied, shaking off the increasing tide threatening to overwhelm her. Just know that this process takes time. You might be surprised at what unfolds. Sometimes the most profound connections are made when we expose the rawness within us. There was truth in his encouragement, but she couldn't help fixating on the unanswered uncertainties that lingered like shadows on the walls of their home. Would the act of unveiling her own struggles help heal their fractured bond, or would it embroil them deeper in the heaviness of shared anguish? Thanks, Jack, she murmured, a shard of clarity forcing itself through her inertia. I think I'll try this. As she ended the call, a newfound sense of resolve surged through her veins. She wasn't just stepping toward her father's healing, she was preparing to embark on her own too, both illuminating their paths and exposing the shadows along the way. Yet an unsettling thought flickered in the back of her mind. What if the process dug deeper, unearthing suppressed emotions she had long buried? Would their mutual transparency ignite hidden conflicts they hadn't yet anticipated? Determined to keep the flame of connection alive, she stood in the doorway, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Tomorrow would demand courage, and uncertainty loomed like a specter. As she gazed out into the waning light, she couldn't shake the feeling that her own challenge had only just begun. Would the evening hold revelations that would irrevocably shift both their trajectories? Sarah awoke to soft streaks of light filtering through the blinds, the morning sun casting a gentle glow in her bedroom. Today was significant. It held the promise of confrontation and the potential for healing both within herself and with her father. The lingering tension from their last conversation intertwined with a burgeoning determination, and she felt an urgent need to make the day count. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she replayed Jack's advice in her mind. Be honest. Set boundaries. Simple yet profound, those words rang as a mantra, sharpening her focus. She understood now that vulnerability acted as a bridge, not just to her father's heart but to her own. Yet a storm of anxiety brewed in her chest. What if the honesty she sought would provoke a backlash? In an effort to calm herself, she immersed her thoughts in the day's plan. A morning walk might clear her head. The familiar rhythm of her feet against the pavement usually helped to unravel her internal chaos. She slipped into her favorite sneakers and headed out, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. As she walked, her mind began to drift, grappling with fragments of unresolved feelings. The sounds of the city buzzed around her, yet she felt isolated in her thoughts. What would she say? How much of her past would she reveal? Each question posed new layers of complexity, but with every step, she resolved to draw strength from her intention. A small park sat along her route, offering a moment of reprieve among the chaos. She settled onto a bench, allowing its worn wood to cradle her. Observing the vibrant colors of the autumn leaves stirred something within her, a reminder of change and renewal. Every leaf that fell represented a layer she could shed as she prepared to confront her father. Yet the exhilaration of potential healing was overshadowed by a formidable fear, that revealing her fears might push her father further away. Why can't I let go of this fear? She whispered to herself, aiming to silence her inner critic. The sound of laughter broke her reverie. A group of children played nearby, their joy infectious. In that moment, the innocence and simplicity of life provided clarity. Connection, she realized, was often born out of honest vulnerability. Encouraged by this perspective shift, she took out her phone and opened a note app, jotting down phrases that resonated with her evolving thoughts. Authenticity matters. Connection grows through shared stories. Hours slipped away as she maintained her focus, but the thought of meeting her father loomed. She understood that the conversation wouldn't be easy, it might require the unraveling of uncomfortable truths. Yet she felt an unfamiliar courage stirring in her, a sense that leaning into her fears could ultimately cultivate a stronger bond. When later she texted Jack, "I'm ready," she felt a tether of connection anchor her. He replied quickly, reminding her to breathe and stay present. After exchanging a few encouraging words, she tucked her phone away, preparing for the evening ahead. As dusk gradually draped the sky, the familiar tension coiled tighter within her. Now at home, she paced the living room, rehearsing what she might say. The apartment felt both a sanctuary and a prison, holding memories that shaped the very core of their relationship. When the doorbell rang, Sarah's heart raced. Deep breath. Confidence was only a choice away. With each step towards the door, she felt the weight of her past, intertwined with the hopes of a new beginning. She opened the door to find her father standing there, weariness etched onto his features. But behind his eyes, she glimpsed a flicker of hope, a resonance to her own. "Hey, Sarah. It's good to see you," he said, his voice steady but soft. Without realizing it, she had already stepped onto the edge of vulnerability. "I'm glad you're here, Dad. I think we need to talk." As they settled into the living room, a charged silence enveloped them, the air thick with unspoken words. Sarah's heart thudded against her chest, a mix of apprehension and resolve. Would this be the evening that began to reshape their fractured reality? As she opened her mouth to speak, she caught his gaze, grounding herself in the recognition of their shared humanity. The moment stretched, pregnant with potential. And then, a flicker of recognition passed between them, igniting the spark of connection that would lead them both into uncharted territory. Would this moment usher forth revelations that would illuminate their path, or would it pull them deeper into their complexities? With the haunting question lingering between them, Sarah felt the tide of change pushing in, ready to reshape their futures. As Sarah sat opposite her father, the weight of confession loomed. The air was heavy, filled with unsaid truths and the potential for renewed connection. Her heart raced, echoing the turmoil she had weathered over the years. This confrontation could either shatter their fragile bond or build a bridge across the chasm of misunderstanding that had defined their lives. "Dad," Sarah began, her voice trembling yet firm. "I want to talk about our past, about us." He looked away, a shadow passing over his face. "There's not much to say, Sarah. I've made my choices." The bitterness in his tone urged a flood of emotions within her, the anger at his actions, the fear of rejection, but most of all, an overwhelming desire to heal. "It's not just about the choices you've made, it's about how they've shaped me, too." She paused, letting her words hang suspended in the charged atmosphere. "I've carried a lot of pain because of your absence." His eyes flickered with a mix of regret and defiance. "You think I don't know that? You think I want it to be this way?" "No," she replied, her heart sinking with empathy. "But we're here now, and I want to understand. I want to help you. But you have to meet me halfway." The moment felt like repelling magnets, both of them drawn together yet unable to coalesce. Her heart ached with the possibility that this conversation could split them apart or reunite them in their shared vulnerability. "Why should I trust you?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper, underscored by pain. "I've only been a burden and disappointment to you." "Because I want us to start fresh," she affirmed, the resolution in her voice solidifying her purpose. "I've learned that healing comes from being honest not just with others, but with ourselves." The air thickened as they both grappled with the rawness of her words. Sarah could see the flicker of something deep in his eyes. Beneath his hardened armor lay a vulnerability he had long suppressed. "Honesty is scary," he muttered, looking down. "What if I fail again?" She leaned forward, offering a compassionate gaze. "What if you succeed? What if this time is different? We can't move forward without facing what's behind us." Tension rippled through him, but she felt a shift, an invitation to break the cycle of shame and regret. His hesitation was palpable, a deep internal struggle manifesting in clenched fists and averted eyes. With gentle encouragement, Sarah continued, "You taught me the importance of care, of healing. It's the foundation of what I want to do as a nurse. But I can't heal alone, you can't either. We need to help each other." Her words hung in the air, sparking a quiet moment of reflection. He exhaled slowly, the sound waited, before standing. "I don't know how to start." "You've already begun," she said, her heart swelling with the potential for transformation. "We can take this one step at a time. But we have to reclaim our story together." As he turned to face her, the barriers began to fracture. "And you have to promise you won't give up on me. I'm not the man I used to be, Sarah." "Neither am I," she responded, feeling a surge of empowerment wash over her. "We're both on a journey of healing, and I want you to know that I believe in your ability to change. It's about finding our way back into each other's lives, about choosing love despite the past." Silence enveloped them, but the tension had shifted. The seeds of healing had been planted in the fertile ground of honesty and empathy. "Okay," he whispered, tears pooling in his eyes. "I want to try." Cheers erupted within Sarah. In that moment, she conquered not only her fears but also forged an unbreakable bond with her father. They had traversed a storm together, and she briefly caught a glimpse of the warmth that could blossom from this newfound connection. As they embraced, a flood of warmth washed over her, a recognition that reconciliation began with vulnerability. In her heart, she felt a transformation. She was no longer just a nursing student or a single mother, she was a conduit of healing, embracing her past while moving toward a future filled with promise. Stepping back, she looked in her father's eyes, resolved, yet softened by the grace of shared understanding. They were both now on the precipice of something greater. She could feel her own empowerment surging forward. She had taken that leap of faith, and together, they would rewrite their narrative. Yet amidst the joy, a thought lingered: would they sustain this momentum? Would they cultivate the resilience required for continued growth? As Sarah met her father's gaze, she understood that their journeys had just begun. They stood on the frontier of healing, where possibilities abounded, revealing paths previously untraveled. This was the moment, this was the beginning. And just as she envisioned their shared future, she felt a familiar tug, the need to connect with Jack, the man who had inspired her to embrace her strength. Before the day closed, Sarah made a promise to herself. She would celebrate her achievements while reaching out for support. She would not shy away from vulnerability, for true healing required a community not just for her father but also for herself. With renewed purpose, the vestiges of uncertainty began to fade into the hopeful horizon of tomorrow. Let this be your call to action, where change begins with a shared story. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to support the channel, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of coming together to uplift one another.